Guten Tag, APUSH. We have a new video today. It's the bee's knees by the big cheese himself, Mr. Liniger. Let's make history today as we jaw over Unit 7, Day 5. First, let's do our daily punishment. Why are frogs so happy? They eat whatever bugs them. All right, key terms for today: John Fitzgerald Kennedy, Robert F. Kennedy, the New Frontier, the Peace Corps, flexible response, Neo Dim, the Bay of Pigs, the Cuban Missile Crisis, the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, Freedom Riders, James Meredith, Letter from a Birmingham Jail, the March in Washington, Medgar Evers, IBCMs. We're going to go over John F. Kennedy's domestic policy and its effects, his foreign policy and its effects, and civil rights under John F. Kennedy, what he did not do, and its effects. So let's get started. In 1960, John Fitzgerald Kennedy will be elected the youngest president. He was glamorous, handsome. He portrayed a youth and vibrancy. It went from the oldest President Eisenhower to the youngest JFK. His cabinet was young. He appointed his brother, Robert Kennedy, as Attorney General. Nepotism. He's going to inspire idealism in America. He was a one-term senator. Afterwards, he had not got a lot of legislation passed, but his dad was rich. He won the election from 1960 partially from his father's mafia ties. There is a lot of evidence that the reason he won Illinois was because of some of the corrupt politics in Chicago and Illinois. But a lot of people did like him. They thought he represented the youthfulness of the 1960s, even though he really didn't have any qualifications. His domestic policy is going to be called the New Frontier. We'll talk about some of the aspects of the New Frontier. One of the big aspects of the New Frontier, one of the only things he gets passed, is the Peace Corps. The Peace Corps is where a person could go off to another country as a student to serve their country abroad, to like help build electricity or clean water or something like that. It's a way to serve your country without fighting in a war. In his inaugural address, he will say that America will put a man on the moon, which does happen in 1969. He will have a narrow majority in Congress. He will have some foreign policy flare-ups originally. In 1961, he'll meet with Khrushchev in Vienna. Khrushchev will kind of dominate the meeting, and he's going to want to be Kennedy will want to be much tougher in the future. In 1961, there'll be a dispute in Berlin. It looked like Khrushchev was ready to invade Berlin. It could have caused a war. But what's going to happen instead is Khrushchev will have the communists create a wall in Berlin. That way the communist people in Germany couldn't sneak over to West Berlin. The Berlin Wall is going to become a symbol of Soviet dominion and repression of Eastern Europe. John F. Kennedy is going to create a bill called the Alliance for Progress. This was a legislative bill that provided 10-year, multi-billion-dollar aid for programs in Latin America. It was designed to improve America's relationship with Latin America, which had been damaged because of us supporting dictators in Latin America because of the Cold War. Remember, FDR tried to fix that then with the Good Neighbor policy, but then like in the 50s under Eisenhower, we supported dictators like Batista in Guatemala. We assassinated their leader, etc. As far as it goes, Kennedy will have some problems with the French. Hypothetically, the French were an allied power, but the French are very prideful. Their leader was Charles de Gaulle. He's going to block Britain's application to join the Common Market, which was the early version of the European Union. He thought Britain wasn't a European country, they're an island. France is going to flirt with neutrality and leaving NATO, and they want to create their own nuclear bombs. They want to be completely independent. France, under de Gaulle, tried to find a third path in the Cold War. Kennedy is going to do a couple things with tariffs. What's happening is in the 1960s and 1950s, the Europe Economic Community, the EEC, is created. in the Treaty of Rome. It was the early version of the European Union. Every country that joined that would have similar tariffs. They wouldn't have tariffs on each other's goods. Kennedy thought that with this, it would shut out Americans from the European market. It would make their goods much cheaper. So he's going to get Congress to pass the Trade Expansion Act, which gave the president authority to decrease duties up to 50% or increase them up to 50%. So he's like worried about the whole European Union joining together, which is a good thing, but it means the European countries are getting rid of tariffs for each other, which could hurt American business. Here's the Berlin Wall. Boo! So, with the end of colonization, newly independent colonies became a headache. There's going to be civil wars. An example is Laos. They're going to have a civil war, so will Cambodia. Some of these will be communist-inspired wars. There's going to be a new type of weapon during this time, IBCMs, interballistic continental missiles. This makes massive retaliation obsolete because you could fire a nuclear bomb from anywhere and it could fly through multiple continents and destroy an area. So, like, there's the whole idea of massive retaliation is you could attack them before they can get to you because you had to fly the planes with the nuclear bombs in them. But now, like, the world could end in a snap of a finger. So Kennedy's new foreign policy is going to be called flexible response. Flexible response says that they would deal with any kind of crises with an array of military responses that can be precisely collaborated to the gravity of the crisis. So it just gave him more flexibility, flexible response, to deal with crises on an individual case-by-case basis. One of the other big issues Kennedy faced was Vietnam. We had been supporting Vietnam really ever since Truman's time. Kennedy's going to increase the soldiers going to Vietnam. He's going to support the pro-American dictator in Vietnam, South Vietnam, Ngo Diem. The communists in the South, led by the Viet Cong, which is the name of their army, are going to wage a guerrilla warfare in South Vietnam. In late '61, Kennedy will increase military advisors. The CIA will support indirectly a coup against Diem. Kennedy will know about it. Diem will be assassinated. Kennedy was hoping, and his advisors were hoping, that the South Vietnamese would get a more popular leader that could rally support in South Vietnam. And Kennedy will continue to increase military and economic aid to South Vietnam. Here's Ngo Diem. Right here. There will be some problems with Cuba during this time. In 1961, the CIA had made a plan ever since the presidency of Eisenhower. They wanted to arm some of the Cuban exiles that escaped when Castro gained power, give them weapons, send them on an invasion on the Bay of Pigs, which is a beach area in Cuba. They would then overthrow Castro and create a democratic pro-American government. Kennedy will give the green light for this. He will support this. It will be a dismal failure. The people will be captured. America's not going to send their army in. The Cuban exiles will get crushed by the communist army. Kennedy will assume full responsibility for this. It's one of his big mistakes in his presidency. Probably the thing that he's most well known for is the Cuban Missile Crisis. Nikita Khrushchev, the communist dictator, is going to start to install nuclear-tipped missiles in Cuba. America will, under Kennedy, will threaten to, if those nuclear bombs are fully built and ready, they will consider it an act of war because then they could be attacked right away. They will quarantine Cuba and blockade the ports. There's 13 days where it looked like the world was going to go to war between America and Russia. At the last minute, Khrushchev will blink and he will agree to a compromise between America and Russia. Both of them will give in. Cuba will take out their nuclear bombs from Cuba. Khrushchev will have Russia take out their nuclear bombs from Cuba. And America promised that within 6 months, they would take out their nuclear bombs from Turkey, which is right near Russia. However, some of the communist leaders in Russia are going to think Khrushchev is weak, so he's going to be forced out of power. The Kremlin, after this, will begin an aggressive program of military expansion. New arms race will happen. Kennedy's going to start to push for an arms control and greater communications between Russia and America. The fact that they almost went to war really scared him. He wants to have. He's going to get America and Russia to pass the Nuclear Test Ban Treaty, which was a ban on above-ground nuclear tests, agreed in 1963, like blowing up nuclear bombs in the air. It banned it. He's going to start to urge Americans to live with the Soviets, not to try to destroy them. He's going to die before this policy really carries out, but this is called the détente policy. And détente is easing of relations, cooling, it means like cold. It's cooling of relations during the Cold War. So in détente, they're trying to warm up and fix the strained relations between America and Russia. And Kennedy starts to do that, but he will be assassinated before his policy is fully implemented. This shows where the Cuban nuclear bombs were in Cuba. Kennedy's going to move very slowly on civil rights. Events will force his hand. In 1961, a group of white and African-American civil rights leaders will take a bus tour throughout the South to protest their segregation on busing. What's going to happen is as this bus, the Freedom Riders, are driving throughout the South, the buses will be attacked. They'll be firebombed. A lot of this will be televised. It'll show the lawlessness and racism in the South. It'll make the South look really bad. And Kennedy's kind of going to be forced by public opinion to take a stronger stand on civil rights. He will work with the SCLC to promote civil rights and to register blacks to vote. But he was afraid of proposing a congressional civil rights bill because he didn't think it would get passed, and he was afraid it would affect his reelection. He will support the integration in the University of Mississippi. James Meredith is going to the Supreme Court is going to say that James Meredith, an African-American man, could attend the University of Mississippi. They're not going to let him, so Kennedy will send in 3,000 troops to allow James Meredith to be integrated with the University of Mississippi. So as you can see, Brown v. Board of Education has happened, but it's going super slow. This is by like the early 60s. Here are the Freedom Riders. So idealistic. Oh, they're arrested. Like they did nothing wrong and they got arrested. Oh, and their bus was firebombed. Okay. So we'll finish up with talking about the struggle for civil rights. In the spring of 1963, Martin Luther King Jr. is going to begin the Birmingham campaign. Birmingham, Alabama is considered the most racist city in America. He wanted to desegregate businesses. The person that was in charge of public safety, like the head police officer, was Eugene Bull Connor. He's going to use violence whenever the African Americans start to push for equal rights and they do nonviolent protest. So when they're marching, which is a constitutional right, or they're sitting down, or they try to have a public protest in a public area, he has his attack dogs go after them. He uses fire hoses, which are really powerful, to knock them down. A lot of this is being televised, so it sees the violence that's going on in the South and how these peaceful people are being attacked, hurt, maimed, sometimes killed, just for demanding their constitutional rights. The police reaction is really going to turn a lot of people against the South. When MLK will be arrested, when he's arrested, he's going to write a letter from a Birmingham jail, which is his real argument for nonviolence and his argument that he has to do something. And it's really a critique of the moderate white Christian that says that MLK should just wait and he's causing problems. Afterwards, there will be a Birmingham march on Birmingham, which will be successful, mostly because of federal intervention. In June 11th, 1963, Kennedy will respond. He's going to be felt like he has to because of all the publicity that's going on with civil rights. He's going to call for a new civil rights legislation. This will not go anywhere in Congress. Around this time, one of the civil rights leaders, Medgar Evers, will be assassinated in Mississippi. He'll be found. There'll be a hung jury, and he won't. The guy that assassinated Medgar Evers won't be convicted until the 1990s. On August 1963, Martin Luther King and the civil rights organizations are going to do a march in Washington. This is where King has his "I Have the Dream" speech, where he pushes for federal legislation protecting African Americans the right to vote. In September 1963, there'll be a bombing of a black church that's going to kill 4 black girls at Sunday school. The nation is horrified by this. This was done by supporters of the Ku Klux Klan. And in 1963 in Dallas, off of I-35, when Kennedy was campaigning for re-election, he is going to be assassinated. He's going to be assassinated by Lee Harvey Oswald, who had ties with like communist organizations. It wasn't like communist inspired. Lee Harvey Oswald was like mentally ill. But he will be killed. For a lot of people at that time, they considered Kennedy's assassination the death of innocence. They thought Kennedy brought a lot of hope and idealism to America. I'm not sure why they believed that. He didn't do that much. But when he died, a lot of people felt like that's when like the idealism of the 1960s died. And he's going to be the first president assassinated since McKinley, I believe. This shows the Birmingham police response by Bull Connor. There's from the March on Washington. These are the 4 girls that were killed in the Birmingham bombing. And here's Kennedy driving on I-35. Obviously, they have more security stuff now for presidents. And this was afterwards. So our new president will be Lyndon Johnson, my favorite president, who we will talk about next class. All right, kiddos, that's all I have for you for today. Until next time, deuces, deuces, yeah.